An East Texas nonprofit held its third reunion today to support the restoration of a Nacogdoches building that stood for more than 120 years. East Texas News Weekend Shakina Davis spoke with community members about the building's impact on history.
When you have that shared history, even though it was humble beginnings, you understand the importance of community.
The African American Heritage Project was inspired by Bertie Wade, a former local advocate who wanted to preserve the history of African Americans in Nacogdoches. Paul Jackson is the president of the nonprofit. He says the goal of the project is to promote the rich history and culture of African Americans in Nacogdoches County. Today's reunion supports this mission, raising awareness for the restoration of the Clay House, a 1900 historic home.
There's a lot of history, of course, with this house and its relationship to the Zion Hill Baptist Church, which was a very intricate part of this community for such a long time.
The reunion helped the organization gather stories linking people to the community. Laisha Williams, a member of the African American Heritage Project, grew up in the Bois d'Arc community.
In this neighborhood, families raise families, and I think that maybe we've lost that as people become more mobile and move.
Williams herself left the area for a while but chose to return to her hometown. She believes having this reunion brings people back to the community.
Those that live here and those that even don't live here, they come here, they travel here to, get in touch with the kids that we played with and see the people that we live next door to.
Helena Abdullah believes it will also give the youth something valuable to cherish.
I think that when you start putting buildings up and hopefully the young people start seeing those buildings, they'll start wondering, okay, what is that all about?
Shakina Davis, East Texas News Weekend.
Looking ahead, the nonprofit will host their fundraising barbecue on the first Saturday of October at the Clay House.